Tastemakers was funded in part by
In the hands of those who take pride in what they do, something unique can be created. Edward Jones is proud to support the craftspeople who define the maker movement.
and by Fleischmann's Yeast and A.B. Mowry.
In the rolling hills north of Kansas City, there is a sheep's milk dairy that builds flavor in its cheeses from the ground up. Come with me to Green Dirt Farm on this episode of Tastemakers. I'm Kat Neville, and I've been telling the story of local food for about 20 years. In that time, I've seen the American food movement explode in tiny towns and big cities from coast to coast. In Tastemakers, I explore the maker movement and take you along for the journey to meet the makers who define the flavor of American cuisine. There are very few sheep's milk dairies in the United States, and so in this episode of Tastemakers, you're in for a treat because we are heading to Weston, Missouri to meet the team behind Green Dirt Farm. Their incredible range of sheep's milk cheeses start right here in the prairie.
My aunt owned a gourmet cheese shop in New Jersey when I was a teenager, and I went there and helped her sell cheese at the holidays. And I learned, from her what really great cheese was, but it didn't even occur to me that I might make cheese. When we bought the farm, I started looking at what are some of the small farm businesses that can be not just environmentally sustainable, but also economically sustainable on the kind of acreage that we had. And I hit on, just by researching and talking to people, value-added dairying, where we made cheese on the farm. And it was at that moment that I realized this is what I should have been thinking about all along. I decided that we would do sheep as a dairy for two reasons, really. One was practical and one was frivolous. The frivolous reason was that sheep were my favorite livestock animal growing up. But the practical reason was that we knew from talking to other people in the dairy sheep industry that Americans import 95% of the sheep dairy products that we consume here. And so it seemed like there would be a good market niche. We wanted to be an artisanal cheesemaker, small and handcrafted, and make something that really reflected the terroir of our place. My thinking at the time was, well, let's make a variety and see what sticks. We'll see what people like. It was more fun for us that way because we got to try a lot of different cheeses and practice and experiment, which is fun for me. It's been one of the great pleasures is learning how to make all those different kind of cheeses.
Cheesemaking is a relatively simple process. Fresh milk is inoculated with cultures, and then rennet or another enzyme is added, and then the milk just kind of hangs out. And during that time period, the proteins and the fats pull away from the whey, which is the liquid portion of the milk. The cheesemaker then cuts the curds and drains the whey, and from there, it's entirely up to their imagination.
Rachel is a very smart and talented young woman who came to work at the farm as an intern. And after she'd been here for about 3 months, she started expressing a desire to really learn cheesemaking. And so then at that point, she became a cheesemaker in training because I was realizing that as we were growing, I needed help and I could not possibly do it by myself. And she's just grown and learned, and she's really got terrific expertise now and a very strong sense of what a good quality cheese is and how to make it.
I have always had a passion for cheese. And I came out here and I apprenticed under Sarah for about 2.5, 3 years and kind of worked my way up the chain, and now I'm the head cheesemaker here, which is kind of crazy, but I love it.
The magic of cheese is that so many types can be made from just one thing, and that is fresh milk. From fresh cheeses to bloomy rinds, washed rinds, and hard-aged cheeses, a range of flavors and textures can be coaxed out of milk from the skill of the cheesemaker.
Starting off with milk and creating so many different products is one of the things that is so magical about cheese making, because there's only 4 things in cheese. There's milk, there's bacteria, there's rennet, an enzyme, and sometimes there's not even that, and there's salt. So everything that goes into making the specific end product, it's all driven by your process. So we receive milk, we drop it down into the kitchen, and then we pasteurize. And you cool down to the temperature that you need. Then you inoculate with good bacteria that's gonna help bring all the flavors out in the cheese that you want. Add some rennet, and then if we're making hard cheese, there's a lot of cooking and cutting that goes on. If it's something like a fresh cheese, we just add one more ingredient and it sits overnight. Flavor in cheese all comes from protein and fat breakdown. Depending on what you're starting with and how long it's aged and how long it sits. Sheep's milk is almost twice as high in protein and fat as goat or cow. The other great thing about it is it's naturally homogenized, which means you don't have the cream separation. And that has to do with the size of the fat molecules. Sheep's milk tastes like almost melted ice cream. It is sweet, it is creamy, it's perfect for coffee. I really love sheep's milk. I think I'm partial, but I think it's the best milk out there.
While Americans consume a ton of sheep's milk cheese, the majority of it is not made here. In fact, there are only about 100 sheep's milk dairies in the United States, and the first one wasn't licensed until the 1980s. One of the reasons is that sheep have a much lower yield or volume of milk that they produce than cows or goats, but that milk is much higher in protein and fat.
There are so few sheep milk dairies in the United States because milking and dairying in the United States started from the very get-go as a business proposition. It was a commodity. And so not only are sheep small volume producers to begin with, the American dairy sheep is about half what a really good dairy sheep can produce. So that makes it very, very challenging from an economic perspective because the cost of production is so much higher when you have an animal that produces very small volumes of milk. I always felt with my kids that I was never going to pressure them to be part of the farm. And really, Eliza was the only one of my children that really took to it. Even though she didn't follow a path in college that had anything to do with agriculture, I think that's really where her heart was. And when she said, I want to do this job, I was so happy. You know, it was really happy to have her home.
So you grew up here on the farm?
Yeah.
So what was that like, and what made you decide that you wanted to follow in your mom's footsteps?
I didn't. I told myself for the longest time that I wasn't ever gonna come back to the farm, but I kind of, I sort of did the classic, went to college, studied something totally different. I studied history and classics in school, but I just didn't know, what exactly I wanted to do, and I was kind of adrift a little bit. But when I graduated, I moved back to Kansas City, although I tried to do other office jobs and things like that, and it didn't really pan out for me. I didn't like being in an office at all, and the farm just needed my help at one point, so I came back and I started working on the farm, and we had an opening for the farm manager position, and I just kind of went to Mom and was like, I really think that's actually the job that I want to do, and she looked at me for a moment, and I think in her mind she was like, she's absolutely crazy. That was 3 years ago, and I love it. I love getting to be outside every day. I love getting to work with the sheep and getting to watch them grow and getting to see, you know, who produces well and how to improve the flock, and all that stuff is really interesting to me. And even the weird things like learning how to fix tractors or change oil on machinery and keep all of that stuff is really interesting. So there's really never a dull moment, and that's one of the things I love about
I would assume so, yeah. We're surrounded by these really adorable tiny lambs. How old are they?
They're about 2 weeks old now.
How long will it take them to reach maturity?
Usually anywhere from 8 months to a year, they've reached their full height and weight.
So what is the personality of a sheep?
Sheep are very funny. Some of them are very opinionated and very interesting and have sort of very clear and apparent personalities. And other sheep are much calmer and just kind of want to fit in with the whole flock. They kind of do their own thing. When the girls are on the milk line, you can really kind of tell what their personality is and what's going on with them, and each of them kind of behaves in a different way, and some of them are total snots and some of them are wonderful, and it's just you kind of you develop a kind of a close relationship with them.
Eliza's role in raising the sheep is one of the most crucial things, because the animals our milk come from have to be healthy and they have to be well fed, because that's directly relating to the flavor and the quality of the milk. Without really good pastures and really good grass and then really healthy, happy animals, you don't have really good milk. And so if we don't have good milk, we have no cheese.
The team at Green Dirt tends the soil to cultivate a biodiverse range of grasses. And as the grasses shift with the season, the flavor that is expressed in the sheep's milk changes too.
We know that about 60% of the flavor in the cheese comes from what the animals are eating. And what they're eating on a farm that has a lot of grass diversity and where the weather changes so much and the climate is different year to year, the plants themselves are completely different year to year. And so we have a different smorgasbord for them to eat. And that means that the flavors in the cheese are different from season to season and from year to year.
Can you tell me what kind of grasses are here?
Yeah, so we have a wide variety of grass. Most of our pastures have a mixture of clovers, brome grasses, timothy, orchard grass, native prairie grasses, and rye grasses as well.
Let's talk about the rotational grazing
Okay.
and the importance of the dirt and the soil that you're
Yeah.
building on the farm, and then also the strategy that you have with the rotational grazing.
So the name of the farm is Green Dirt Farm. So one of the really big things for us ever since the very beginning of the farm is how do we be environmentally sustainable and how do we improve the landscape around us and also work with the landscape. This soil where we are in the bluffs is highly erodible soil. And so really one of the only things that you can do to kind of make it work and function is actually to graze animals on it. And sheep are really perfect for that because they're a low impact animal. They're not very big and they eat all kinds of things. They are grazers like cattle, but they also will eat some of the weeds and stuff that like to pop up around here. So they do a really good job of keeping pastures clean and looking really nice. It helps to improve the level of the topsoil in the ground as well. So that's kind of the ultimate goal.
We move our sheep very frequently. We never let them eat the grass down below about 6 inches in height. When they eat that, the leaf structure gets essentially been killed off. Then the roots die back. And those roots add organic matter to the soil. And that organic matter is not just about building fertility inside the soil and creating the scaffolding for the microbes and the insects and all of the life that goes on in the soil, but it's also about leaving carbon in the soil. So it acts as a carbon sequestering place, and that's one of the ways that will help to offset the greenhouse gas production of our animals, which we know that dairy animals produce a lot of greenhouse gases. Literally, we're soil farmers. We're dirt farmers. We're taking care of our dirt. That's what the foundation for our farm is taking absolutely the best care of our soil that we possibly can.
I am here in the TerraVox tasting room, which is inside of Green Dirt Farm's Creamery. And Winifred is going to take me through a tasting of some of TerraVox's really interesting American grape varieties. You probably have never heard of, I would say, the majority of these grapes.
That's correct. So Jerry Eisterhold, our proprietor, came across this book, Thomas Wolney Munson's Foundations of American Viticulture, and became so fascinated that he decided to source the grape varieties that Munson talked about in this book. The grape varieties that we grow are unique in that instead of being native to Europe, which we call vinifera varieties, these grapes are native to North America. And what I love about these grapes is that they're unique to our place, but they have an incredible expression. And we specialize in dry style wines, and that's a little bit different than what the rest of Missouri is doing.
You really are producing a large number of wines that are, available for tasting.
That's correct. So we grow over 30 different grape varieties, and of those 30 grape varieties, we actually produce approximately 15 to 20 different varietal wines within any given vintage.
Tell me a little bit about the partnership here between the Creamery and also the winery, because the terroir that's expressed in the cheese that Green Dirt's making and the terroir that's expressed in the wines that TerraVox is making,
yes,
they're both so unique, and so seeing them here together is really a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So Jerry has been really, really close friends with Sarah Hoffman and her husband John, the owners of Green Dirt Farm, and they've been friends for a really long time and have always wanted to create this food and wine experience. And I think that's really important when we talk about food in terms of locality. It does have a place, and that's really important. The wines that we craft and the cheese that Green Dirt Farm crafts, they just pair perfectly. And I think that's something really special. It's something to be celebrated. And it's more than just terroir. It's about community, and it's about understanding kind of what your local community is interested in and what they want to celebrate too.
So we should taste some wine. What do you want to start with?
So what I'm going to start with is actually a varietal wine that's near and dear to my heart. This is our 2017 Wetumpka. This grape is quite unusual. It's got incredible chemistry that's completely different from your typical European winemaking grapes. It's much, much higher in acid. It's much more intense aromatically. And this is one of the few wines that you will taste that actually tastes a little like grapes.
Oh.
Most wines don't taste like grape once you vinify them. So Wetumpka is an outlier in that.
I've never had a Wetumpka wine before, and the nose is intensely floral, but on the palate, it's like lime zest, exactly.
Absolutely.
It kind of hits you with a real burst of acidity.
Absolutely.
It's surprising and really delicious.
I absolutely love the Wetumpka with the Green Dirt Farm fresh cheese.
Oh, cool.
Particularly their rosemary flavor. That's one of my favorite all-time pairings. I just think it's absolutely fantastic. So up next, I'm gonna pour for you our 2017 Cloïda. Cloïda is one of my favorite grapes. It produces for us right now quite a light-bodied red wine.
It has beautiful acidity to it.
It does. It's not overpowering, but it's definitely not going to fall flat once you bring food into the picture.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're outside of Kansas City. I would say this would be perfect with pulled pork.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This is a white port-style wine made with the Wetumpka grape. That was the first wine that we tasted.
Oh, I really like that.
Yeah,
It is lemony.
it is.
I expected it to be sweeter, and it's not. Even though it's a port,
It's got that acidity.
it really is good.
Yeah.
So now that we've tasted these amazing wines, I think it's about time we go meet the man behind this project.
I agree.
Okay, let's go meet Jerry.
My day job is designing museums, and museums are all about sort of a cultural definition and helping people to understand who they are and where they come from and therefore where they might go. There are canonical museums that sort of define the official story of X, Y, or Z, say a Smithsonian. There's also museums that try to draw out the specific character of a specific place, and this is really kind of an extension of that, to see what comes out of the stuff of this particular part of the planet and its sort of genetic and biological heritage. The project is called TerraVox. It's the voice of the land, to see what these grapes have to say. So some years ago, we met Sarah and John, Green Dirt Farms. Obviously, they are philosophically aligned. I mean, we'd heard about the famous dinners that they had for years and years before we could ever sort of find a slot to go up there. And then we did, and by golly.
The Green Dirt Farm Creamery features Terra Box on one side, offering local wine tastings, and on this side, you can get a hold of their cheese boards, ice cream, and also sandwiches, featuring their cheeses, of course, along with other local ingredients and farm-to-market bread. That is where we're headed next.
Here at Farm to Market, we are a wholesale and retail bakery. So we kind of have two sides of us. We have sliced breads and English muffins and things like that that we sell in the grocery stores direct to consumers. And then we have bread that we make specifically for restaurants. Eliza and Sarah, I've known for quite a while. I cut my teeth doing dinners up there with other chefs. So right now, Green Dirt Farm is using Grains Galore and Farm Panini. The Grains Galore is a pretty basic multi-grain. It's got lots of seeds and nuts. And then our farm it's like a traditional French farm. It's got a little sour to it. It's a naturally leavened dough that, kind of rises throughout the day. And then it's just kind of a specific shape so that they can make sandwiches with it.
Dinner's ready. It's important to support a local small batch food scene, creative food scene. Having food that is specific to a place, that has flavors that are specific to a place, you're not going to find it anywhere else. It is that unique and that wonderful. These are arts that are dying away if we don't preserve them. If we don't have knowledge in the community of how to make cheese this way, it will go away. We need some people who care about it and who want to continue it. It's one of the ways that we can bring life back to our rural communities, many of which are dying, because these are labor-intensive, handcrafted foods that require people's hands on them. Those kinds of things help create jobs and create community amongst a rural community and create community amongst the food makers. And that's what I really love about doing this.
Hosts a number of events in an effort to build community, including tours, tastings, and chef dinners, just like the one that Hanna of the Rieger is hosting here tonight, featuring lamb and cheeses and other ingredients from right outside of this door.
When we ask the chefs to come up here and create a meal, their challenge is to create something unique and original with what we make on the farm. Hanna, he's an integral part of the Kansas City food scene. I think he's so well respected, and he's just a phenomenal, phenomenal chef, and always game for something adventurous.
I've been a chef in Kansas City for many years, and my own restaurant opened about 7 years ago. We change the menu 4 times a year, and there's been Green Dirt products on every single menu. So I'm a huge fan of their cheeses. For our farm-to-table dinner tonight, we're really trying to highlight as many local products as we can, and most importantly, highlight products from Green Dirt Farm. So we're really using their cheeses and their meats kind of across 4 courses. I wanted to give them the experience of trying the lamb itself in the most simple, most direct way, and to me, that's raw. So we're doing a carpaccio first. In the second course, there's a frittata that's using bassa, which is the big cheese that kind of brought us all here. They'll also have the tongues, hearts, livers, and kidneys from the animals. All of those were grilled and then chopped, and they'll be mixed in with some other ingredients in the frittata. The main course is a Yucatan-style dish. There's a very flavorful marinade on the meat, and then it's roasted really slow and low, and it's gonna be falling apart and tender. We're doing that with heirloom black beans, some braised collard greens, some pickled spring onions, and then some fresh tortillas as well.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for joining me in Weston, Missouri, and I will see you next time. There's more information on the makers featured in this series, along with recipes and extra videos at wearetastemakers.com.
tasteMAKERS was funded in part by
In the hands of those who take pride in what they do, something unique can be created. Edward Jones is proud to support the craftspeople who define the maker movement.
and by Fleischmann's Yeast and A.B. Mowry.